اللهم انكر سورة المباركة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفتن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل ممدود فطر الخلائق بقدرته ونشر الرياح برحمته ووتد بالصخور ميدان أرضه والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. اللهم صل والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين واللعن الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. آمنا بالله وصدق الله العلي العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Tawbah, ayah number 119 tells us, O you who believe, be careful of your duty to Allah and be always with the truthful ones. When we look at this Quranic command, it is addressed to those who have brought faith, those who are people of Iman, those who have accepted La ilaha illallah. It has two specific instructions. First is to adopt taqwa and be God conscious, and the other one is to be with the truthful ones. This ayah of Surah Tawbah commands us to fear displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in order to understand displeasing Allah, we need to look for examples, which we will look inshallah today. But the best way to maintain taqwa, Allah says, and having to fear displeasing Allah is to be with the truthful ones. Kunu ma'as sadiqin. And when we look at our own deen, we see that Rasulullah Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam is one whose very first and foremost title is As-Sadiq. And when we look at our madhab, our fiqh, we are also based on the sixth Imam, whose title is also As-Sadiq. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And alhamdulillah, we have gathered here together. May Allah shower us with His blessings and grant us tawfiq to be able to understand and take a glimpse of the status of Imam, whom we have gathered to commemorate here. And it is not really possible to understand the Imam and comprehend him totally. And especially an Imam by whom we identify ourselves. His works and his contributions are so vast. And we do not call ourselves only Muslims and Shias, but we also call ourselves Jaffari. And in trying to look at this perspective, today we want to look at a couple of students of the Imam, so that we may understand the greatness of the Imam through the students of the Imam, him being their teacher, and also look at partially what the Imam's, how his attitude was, how he lived amongst people when he was there, despite being the Imam of the Ahlul-bayt alayhimus salam. And we see that he has left behind a legacy in his teachings of spreading knowledge to such an extent that we see that we have students of this Imam even in today's age. and that is what the mujtahideen are, and the ijtihad that we have is based on the ahadith and the teachings of the Ahlul-bayt alayhimus salam, which are teachings from the Quran and Rasulullah only. So we want to understand this and get some inspiration out of this, and we do not compare the Imam with any of his students. Many times we see that, certain Imam said this and certain Imam said that, but the Imam of Ahlul-bayt alayhimus salam said this. We do not compare students of the Imam and the Imam. We compare students of the Imam within themselves. We compare student to a student and teacher to a teacher. Imam had many students, and we have heard many times that he had as many as 4,000 students at one given time. However, these are the known students. There are many who are unknown students, and the legacy continues until this day. And these students during his lifetime were in Medina, in Kufa, Baghdad, and many other places as well. One such student that we want to discuss today is by the name of Muhammad bin Muslim al-Thaqafi. Ibn Muslim al-Thaqafi is a very prominent student of the Imam, and when it comes to ilmul rijal, the science of knowing the people who have narrated ahadith, his name lists at the top of the list. And when ulama of narrators give us these look into the science of those who have narrated ahadith, we see that Muhammad ibn Muslim was a student of the 5th and the 6th Imams. He lived more with the 5th Imam though, but he was a loyal student, and he continued being a student of the 6th Imam. At the same time, there were many other students, and two such students rather, that were there during the time of the 6th Imam were Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Anas bin Malik. These are two students of the Imam who learnt under Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, but thereafter proclaimed imamat for themselves in fiqh. And Imam Abu Hanifa is known as Imam al-Azam, and he is the greatest of all the 4 Imams of fiqh in Ahl Sunnah, and has a great following, such that if we look at the Asian and the subcontinent, Indian subcontinent, majority are Hanafis. Whilst when we look at North Africa, we will see majority of them being Malikis. And there are many statements that they have given for Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, but we want to move forward. And we see that both Muhammad ibn Muslim and Imam Abu Hanifa were both living in Kufa at the same time. They were contemporaries of each other. Whilst one was a staunch Shia and a very loyal student of the Imam, the other started his own school of fiqh. And to understand the Imam, we do not compare them with the Imam, but we compare the two of them, and we see that there is a very interesting narration that has been narrated by none other than Muhammad ibn Muslim himself. And he says one day it was summertime and was extremely hot in Kufa. We all understand what heat is, and when it comes to summer, but we have to understand and appreciate it. In those days, there were no air conditioners. There was nothing, no amenities or facilities that we have, yet we have so much to complain about. Those days, people didn't have these amenities and never complained about this. And he says that one particular night, when it was extremely hot, I went on the top of my roof of my house to rest because it was very hot. And it was very late in the night when I heard a knock on the door. So I asked, without seeing who it was, that who is it? And there was a soft voice that came and said that I have come to you and I have an urgent need. I need to speak to you. So he got down. He says, I got down and went to the door and realized that there was an elderly lady at the door. So I asked her, what is it that you needed? And she said that my daughter-in-law, who was pregnant, went into labor, and before she could deliver, it became so difficult for her that she died. but we can feel the child in her womb to be alive and moving. So what do? Do we just bury her like that, or what else do we need to do? Muhammad ibn Muslim answers and says, Ya Amatullah, O servant of Allah, during the time of my Imam Muhammad al-Baqir salawatullahi wasalamu alayk, the Imam was asked a similar question, and he answered that you need to cut through the womb and remove the living child, what we know today as a C-section. Even though we are not allowed to mutilate or cut the body of a dead person or a dead Muslim or dead person, anyone who is dead, we are not allowed by the laws of Sharia to be able to cut through. But in this case, this was special, in a special situation, and my Imam had said that we need to remove the living child from the dead mother and thereafter bury her. Thus you go and do the same thing. However, when he had already answered, he asked her one question. He says, O Amatullah, you know I am in a kind of isolation. Muhammad ibn Muslim had grown quite old and had isolated himself from public life. I hardly come out and people don't even know me who I am. So how did you reach my door? Who sent you here? And this is where she says that I was sent to you by Abu Hanifa. I went to him first, and we all know, and she says that as we all know, he has his own opinions about everything. And I went to him and he told me that he does not have an answer. He was wise enough to tell her that he does not have an answer and that I should come to you to get the answer. However, he has also told me and taken a promise from me that when I get an answer from you, I should go and inform him as well of your answer. From this event, we can see that we do not compare Imam Abu Hanifa with Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, but we compare Imam Abu Hanifa with another student, which is Muhammad ibn Muslim. And we see that the next morning, Muhammad ibn Muslim is narrating this himself, that the next morning I went to the masjid where Abu Hanifa used to generally give his lectures. I went and sat down and I realized that he was narrating the same story that happened with me last night as his, and he was explaining the situation. So he says, I went nearer to him and made a gesture to let him know that I am within the gathering. And Abu Hanifa just told him very silently, let me live, let me survive. And this goes on. And we realize that sometimes we get these questions that the Imam said things 14 centuries ago. The world has evolved tremendously. There is no comparison in the world we live in today, the modern times that we have, and those that were during the times of the Aimma alayhimus salam. So how can we take their statements and opinions at this time or during these periods of modern technology and all that progress that we have? The first and foremost answer of our ulama is that having such a question in one's mind is in itself a lack of understanding of the aqaid of the Shia Ithna Ashari faith. Rasulullah and the Aimma alayhimus salam told us only things that were inspired to them. The wahi that came to Rasulullah, and he is the teacher of all the imams through Amir al-Mu'mineen and thereafter, is what is inspired by Allah himself. These were not got through schooling. They didn't go to any school. They did not have any teachers for them. They were the teachers of mankind. And therefore, whenever we have these sayings and ahadith of the Aimma alayhimus salam, it is this ijtihad, the mujtahideen who look at this in principle and then come up with new situations and answer new situations accordingly, based on principles only from the Quran, Rasulullah, and the Ahlul-bayt alayhimu salatu wassalam. Salawat ala Muhammad wa al Muhammad. And Alim has beautifully analyzed this event of Muhammad ibn Muslim and his answer that he has given. And he says that if we are to analyze this issue, we see that saving only one of the two is important when it comes to a choice that we need to make. And many times we get this, the doctor says to a father that either your wife will survive or your child will survive. If the pregnancy goes any further, there is danger to the life of both the mother and the child, and we can save one. Who do we need to save? And we always use the principle of saving the mother. Why? There is a principle behind this, and that is we need to save a living person compared to a potentially living child who is not yet living. He is potentially to live. And therefore, the living person always has precedence over the one who is potential to live. However, in this case, the child was living. The mother was already dead. So saving that living child becomes a priority. And these are the principles that we have in Sharia. In that case, the hurmat of the dead body of the mayyit is ignored. It is haram to cut off a dead body or mutilate or cut or do post-mortem or whatever. However, in this case, because you need to save a child, it is ignored. The hurmat is ignored. Now, when we come to the life of the Imam himself, we see that Imam lived during the time when the Banu Umayyah and the Banu Abbas were fighting for power. Slowly and steadily, the Umayyads were eliminated and the Banu Abbas took power. After Hadi Abbas, it was time for Mansur Abbasi, who ruled for 16 years during the time of the Imam Jaffar Sadiq salawatullahi wassalamu alayhi. Mansur was known to be an anti-Shia, and we know all of us that Mansur and the Banu Abbas are called Banu Abbas because they are from the lineage of Abbas, the uncle of Rasulullah, as well as the uncle of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Yet Mansur was known to be anti-Shia, anti-Ahlul-bayt. And in his time, he ensured that the rich, the elite, the powerful, the influential people, as well as the learned people would visit Mansur regularly and pay their respects to Mansur. And it was his expectation that the Imam also do the same. That whenever he would go for Hajj, for example, he should come and say hello to Mansur first and go, and when he returns, he should go back to the palace and say hello to Mansur. Or when he went to Iraq, or wherever he went, he should come regularly and frequent the palace of Mansur regularly. Imam refused to do this. And there was a time when Mansur, and history records, that Mansur did not only convey this message to the Imam, in fact, he wrote a letter to the Imam saying, "Why don't you come to visit us the way people come to visit us?" He is writing to the Imam of the time, Imam of Ahlul-bayt alayhimu salam. Imam's response is something that we need to ponder upon. Imam says, "We don't really have anything from dunya and its wealth, the mal of dunya, that we would fear that you would take it away from us. We don't have anything of mal dunya that you will deprive us of or take it away from us. And secondly, neither do you have anything of the akhirah that I should be longing to come and see you for it." Imam has put the principle of why one would go to the palace. Either you are fearful of losing what of dunya you have, or you are going in search of getting something for the akhirah. And we know that the Ahlul-bayt alayhimus salam are the people of akhirah. They have nothing that Mansur would be able to offer to him. And these are the two main reasons. Thereafter, Imam continues and says that also there is nothing good that has happened that I should come and congratulate you, nor is there been any tragedy in your family that I should come and condole you. So there is nothing that I have to come. When Mansur received this, and we know that he as a king and person in power, he was not going to let it loose so easily. So he is going to continue with this. So Mansur, however, now writes a letter again in response, which is a little more humble. And he says, why don't you become my companion to advise me? We can see politics in play, not here now, but even then it was the same things. He was trying to convey that I am not saying that I will take anything of dunya from you because you don't have anything, nor am I saying that I have anything of the akhirah that you can get from me, but you can at least advise me. Imam again responds to this very shortly, but very aptly, and he says, a person who seeks his dunya will dare not advise you. And a person who is looking for the akhirah will not become your companion. Imam is again emphasizing this point, that if I am looking for dunya, then I am not going to tell you anything more than what you want to hear, or more than what you are going to say. I am only going to say, Hewallah, Amanna, yes sir, thank you, all that. And I am not going to be saying, if those who are looking for dunya are not going to advise you, and at the same time, a person of akhirah and one who is looking for akhirah like the Imam himself cannot become your companion because you are not going to follow him either. Mu'mineen, at this juncture, let us stop for a moment and look at our contemporary times. And it is very heartbreaking to even say these things. But we see that sometimes in our gatherings, we see that there is some form of derogatory remarks against the ulama of our time. These ulama, and I would like to make a specific reference to the marja of our time, the one whom we follow is in Taqleed, Ayatullah al-Udhma, Sayyid Sistani, and we want to look at his seerah, that he has adopted exactly the seerah of the Imam. He does not visit the politicians. In fact, there was a time he even refused the most powerful politicians of the world from even visiting him. And when we see at one of these events that took place a couple of years back, just a few years back, when he had to go for his medical treatment to the United Kingdom, he was offered by the then government of Shias about even security for himself, and he refused to even take that security or any other favor from the government. He says, we will make our own arrangements. This is a student of Imam Sadiq, centuries away from Muhammad ibn Muslim, centuries away from Imam Jaffar Sadiq salawatullahi wasalamu alayh. Sometimes we get into pride and arrogance without even realizing. I read a couple of ayahs and translated them into the language I understand. I read a few ahadiths here and there, sometimes even through WhatsApp. And then I start judging the ulama, the alim who has given his entire life to study the principles of deen and convey it and make it accessible to us laymen. We have become so bold. This is something we need to pause and think about. So we go back to Mansur. Mansur tried time and again to pressure the Imam that he comes to him. And pressure increased to such a level that once Imam had to go on one such occasion to the palace of Mansur. When Imam was there with Mansur, and as they were talking, and we must realize that Allah has His own ways of doing things. Mansur is sitting with the Imam, and the Imam is sitting with Mansur, and there is a fly that is buzzing around, and every time it makes a round, comes and sits on the nose of Mansur. This keeps on happening. He tries to remove it, tries to take it away, but it goes away and comes back and does the same thing. So he is now frustrated and in agony. So he, in frustration, and anger now, he tells the Imam, why did Allah have to create something like a fly? And Imam very calmly and simply answered him, Allah created this fly to humiliate the tyrants. Very simple but very straightforward answer. Imam was telling Mansur that with all your wealth, all the power, the entire army and the weaponry that you have, you can't do anything to this fly also, which is bothering you for some time now. And we have to understand and realize that all this temporal power, pomp and pageantry that we have, we cannot even remove a fly if Allah has sent it to humiliate us. We have to understand this. And there are many, many, many examples in history. In our contemporary times, we have the event of the helicopters of the most advanced army of the world that were destroyed by just a wind. In 1980, the event of Tabas is there. When we look at the Iceland volcano in 2011, for example, a volcano that erupted under the glacier of Iceland. It was so powerful that the spewing of that ash went up 65,000 feet above in the air, which is more than 20 miles, mu'minin. That went into the air. The result is the ash went so far and wide that the entire northern and western Europe was at a standstill in terms of flights. There were no flights. Everything was cancelled for 5 days, such that even Air Force One of United States could not take our president to the then president to the funeral of a king that was happening during that time. Just ash, because that ash spread so fast that it came right until the shores of Greenland, across the Atlantic as well. So we understand that we are weak, however much power that we have. And when we look at this, whatever our advancement is, our weakness is there. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Alhaj, the 22nd surah, speaks about this and says, Ya ayyuhan nasu zuriba mathalu fastami'u lah. إن الذين تدعون من دون الله لن يخلقوا ذبابا ولو اجتمعوا له وإن يسلبهم الذباب شيئا لا يستنقذوه منه ضعف الطالب والمطلوب. O people, here it is not mu'minin, it is addressed to the entire mankind. O people, a parable, an example has been given to you, therefore listen to it. Surely those whom you call upon besides Allah cannot create even a fly. And though they should all get together and gather for it, and should the fly snatch away anything from them, they cannot take it back from it. Weak are the invoker and weak is and the invoked. So we must understand that whatever power we have, we are weak, created weak, and Allah has created something above us. And that is, we must realize the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when one becomes humble in front of Allah Accepting Allah's power, Allah elevates him and raises him. Do we need to give this example? For our young ones, yes. We can tell them, where are the Banu Umayyah and the Banu Abbas today? They are in oblivion in history. But when you look at Hussein, he is alive and he is powerful even today. That today we are sitting to commemorate the shahadat of Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Where is Mansur and where is the power of Banu Abbas? We must realize that when one gets humble and when puts himself as a servant of Allah, the more we bend to Allah, the more Allah will raise us and will keep our memory and will keep us alive. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we come to this very important question. What do I learn from this as a layman? This is talking about power, this is talking about pride and arrogance. But I neither have power nor have any authority. Why does it have to, am I concerned with this? Yes, we are. We need to understand that each one of us is under someone and above someone. It could be our employees in our workplace. It could be those for whom we are just a supervisor in our workplace if we are working for someone. It could be my wife or my spouse and my children, that I am above them. Somebody is senior and somebody is junior. That is the system. And that each one of us have juniors below us. It is how we treat them and how we interact with them, whether it is my own children and my own family of whom I control. That is important. If there is any iota of pride or arrogance in that, then I have a problem that Allah will destroy me and will not allow me to move any forward, neither in this dunya nor in the akhirah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We understand and learn that never should we have any form of takabbur, be it pride, be it arrogance, whatever we call it, because it will become the cause of our destruction. And that we must understand, that Allah never uses mighty things to destroy pride. The event of Abraha, the king of Yemen, who came with elephants to destroy Kaaba, Allah sent Ababil, the smallest of the birds. When it comes to the tyrants of the time, Allah sends a fly. Namrud got a fly, some historians say, which entered through one nose and got him to his death. Some say it went through the nose, whichever it is, but it was the fly that destroyed Namrud. However, going further on this point of pride and arrogance, Ayatullah Wahid Khurasani, may Allah prolong his life, he says that we need to feel Allah and not be proud in whatsoever form, including our thought of being proud. For example, he says that if a person even thinks that Allah has used him to humiliate another, even that is takabbur, and even that thought will be destroyed. And he gives an example from this same event of Imam and Mansur. He says there, Imam tells Mansur that the fly is there to destroy the takabbur of the tyrants. And Allah himself in Surah Al-Ankabut says, مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ كَمَثَلِ الْأَنْكَبُوتِ اتَّخَذَتْ بَيْتًا وَإِنْ أَوْحَنَا الْبُيُوتِ لَبَيْتُ الْأَنْكَبُوتِ لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. The example, the parable of those who take guardians besides Allah is the parable of a spider that makes for itself a house. And most surely the frailest of houses is the spider's house. Did they but not know? Now here Ayatullah Wahid explains that we all know that the spider's web is the lightest thing. A little wind blows and it is gone. Not only that, he says, even a small blow from our own mouth can remove that spider's web and it is destroyed. But he says that a fly which humiliates the tyrants, Allah has created that it gets stuck into a spider's web, and that is the end of that fly. So Allah does not like an iota of pride or arrogance in any of His creations, including the human beings, that we should not even have the thought that Allah has used me to humiliate another tyrant. Even that thought in itself is takabbur. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When we see that Mansur could not tolerate the Imam and could not bear the importance of the Imam, we see he became jealous. That is all the main reason, and suspicious of Imam's sincere efforts to spreading knowledge. It is during this period of the end days of Shawwal that he sends poisoned water to the Imam, which became the cause of Imam's martyrdom. He could enforce and bring the Imam to his palace, but he could not bend the Imam and the humility that he had for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we see that after the day of Ashura, there is no power that even dared raise their sword against the Imams of the Ahlul-bayt, and therefore it was poison that was always used for the children of Ali and Fatima. The enmity of the children towards the children of Ali and Fatima. Imam was martyred in Medina, and he was honorably buried in Jannatul Baqi. The place that we complain has been razed to the ground, and even the lovers of the Imam are not allowed to go near the tombs of the Aimma alayhimus salam. What a difference we tell the Imam. Ya Imam, you are in Medina and your son is in Qadhmain. Look at the two places. When we go to Qadhmain, we see the place is enshrined, the place has light, and it has millions of lovers of the Ahlul-bayt who come and pay their respects and do ziyarat of the Imam. But Ya Imam, you are in Baqi, not because the Shias don't want to have a shrine there. Every one of us would like to see a shrine in Baqi over the graves of the Aimma alayhimus salam, but it is the tyrants and the powers of the world today that are not allowing us to do it. And not only that, they do not even allow us to go near the graves these days. We present our condolences to Imam Qadim alayhi salam and say, Ya Imam, yes, Imam Sadiq was martyred through poison, but Imam in Medina was given an honorable funeral. He was given a full honor and respect before he was buried. Medina saw people from all walks of life gathering and coming. Medina came to a standstill on this day when Imam was buried. And it was a time when after the burial, a senior companion like Abu Basir went to the house of the Imam to present his condolences in all humility. And when he was doing that, the wife of the Imam, the widow of the Imam, from behind the curtain says, "Oh Abu Basir, do you want me to tell you the last wasiyah of the Imam?" And Abu Basir says, "Please tell me." And she says that he gathered his entire family and said, "Surely our shafa'at will not avail one who takes his salat lightly." Mu'minin, this was the last wasiyah of the Imam before he passed away. Our lamentation to Hamida Khatun, the wife of the Imam, is that your wali was given a respectful burial. He was given kafan, he was given ghusl by Imam al-Qadim, he was prayed upon, and he was buried with full honors in Jannatul Baqi. Companions like Abu Basir could come and present their condolences. But we take you to one more widow some time back. When we go to Karbala, we see Karbala is unique. The Imam was killed brutally and mercilessly. Not even a drop of water was given to Hussein during his last moments. And yes, there came people, there were thousands of Muslims in Karbala also who came towards the camp of Rasulullah in the house of Fatima, but they did not come to give condolences to the family. They came to loot the little that the Ahlul-bayt had. They came to snatch the veils and the chadar of the women of Janab Fatima. They came to burn the tents of Fatima to Zahra, and as if this was not enough, they raised the head of Hussein on a spear and they put his body on the ground and lined up horses so that they could trample the body of Hussein. Allah la'natullahi al-qawmi al-zalimin wa sayalamu alladhina zalamu ayya min kalabin yankalibun inna lillah wa inna ilayhi rajiun. Matam Hussein.